y'all, good morning. Hope you're doing well today. So in today's message, I want to share with you some thoughts on assessing the heart, not just our own but others, as well as identifying the fruits of a heart, and furthermore understanding how our biggest pearls are often demonized, and why that matters, right? So I'm going to share with you, I'm going to open up as an example on that last part there with explaining something that seemed like a little bit of a contradiction to me in reading the Bible. So, you know, I've shared many times with you all, but if you're new to my channel, this is important that I share this, okay? One of my favorite Bible verses is wisdom is the principal thing, and with all you're getting, get understanding. So we're told that understanding is crucial, and I just want to elaborate here real quick if you're new to my channel. I hope that regardless of what I share, and specifically when I bring up the Bible or certain we discuss various belief systems and religions and philosophies and things like that on my channel, and so I just hope that you're able to take what I share with you and filter it through your own belief system and perception and understanding, and gain something of value for listening, okay, for yourself, or through listening for yourself. So I just want to put that out there. I never try to assert my beliefs or my understanding as absolute truth. Okay, so I just want to share that with you if you're new, okay? But I think that if you are truly someone, and this is going to tie into the message today too, if you're truly someone who cares about truth, and then you're not really going to be like fastened, like hard and fast attached to any particular opinion. You know what I mean? When you're a truth seeker, it's kind of like you understand that the more you learn, the more there is to learn. You know, you kind of understand that. And so I know that in that regard, that's going to filter out a lot of people who won't have interest in listening because they're very set in their ways. But for those of us who do want to learn and grow, I don't even have to say these things. You know, I know that you're going to understand that it's all about just taking in information and then just working it in your mind to see, you know, how it sits, and if you can pull anything from it to bring some puzzle pieces together, right, to learn something. But I like I said, in reading the Bible, it was always strange to me. It felt like a contradiction, because on one hand we have that verse I just shared with you all, that wisdom is the principal thing, and with all you're getting, get understanding. So we're encouraged to learn. Okay, and I love how it specifically calls out this difference between wisdom and understanding, right? To me, it's like understanding is that deeper level. Taking wisdom that we are exposed to when we learn something, taking that in our mind, chewing on it or marinating in it, like I like to say, and until it clicks and it's relatable, and at that point you gain a deeper understanding, and it's kind of like it takes root. And that's how I view the process of understanding, right? So we're encouraged to do that on one hand, okay? But then on the other hand, see, you have wisdom kind of, or knowledge being framed in a way in the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden as being a bad thing that we shouldn't want, right? At least not our own without the assistance of God, right? So, and I think that's crucial. I think that's a crucial part to not leave out the spiritual aspect, right? If you believe in a spiritual realm, I think that there's a higher level of truth and a higher level of wisdom that that supersedes, you might say, that's more than the limited human mind, for sure. So there's that. But you know, when you look at that story in the Garden of Eden, the serpent tempted Eve with knowledge. That was the whole point of it, that, you know, here, if you eat this fruit, you will become as God, right? or actually I think it actually says as the gods, plural. I'll have to check again. But the point is, it's like, don't you want to know everything? So it's kind of like, in that regard, knowledge is spun in a negative light. Okay? Almost like just believe what you're told and don't question it yourself. You see what I'm saying? And so it feels contradictory to me a little bit. So this is where, here's how I like to view truth, right? Not subjective truth, but like real, for real, ultimate truth. A lot of times you hear people talking about a spectrum on any given topic. It doesn't matter what topic it is. A lot of times there's a spectrum. And there's people that camp out, you might say, on either side of the spectrum, right? This is often referred to as black and white thinking. And then you have all of the gray area in between. And the in-between part is where all the details are. And of course, if you hit right in the middle, it's going to be a, hypothetically speaking, right? It should be an equal proportion of details that support this side and versus all the details that support this side meeting in the middle, right? And so I would imagine that if you have someone that camps out in the middle, which feels rare nowadays, people are very set, it seems like, in our society to just pick one side or the other on a lot of different things, but for those who are in the middle, it's kind of like, I think they can see the bigger picture, okay? And the reason I say that, a lot of times if you ask someone who's sitting way over here on this side of the spectrum, well, why do you feel this way? They typically can't substantiate their choice, is how it feels. It's like their arguments are often not substantiated, regardless of what side of the spectrum it is. And so that in itself should be a clue to us, okay? Because a lot of times there may be a lot of fancy speech, right, to support one camp or the other, but there's not a lot of details. There's not a lot of substance, okay, to back it up. That's where you have to move to the middle to find all that and see, when you start moving into the middle to discover the details, what happens. If you start like on one side of the spectrum and you want to know the details, it's going to move you a little bit this way. You see what I'm saying? See what happens? When you want the details, it moves you here. So I like to view truth, ultimate, real truth, objective truth, instead of it being like this flat line. I like to see it like two sides of the spectrum, two ends, two polar opposites, you might say, and then moving towards the middle. Instead of it being this way, I envision it being this way, like a triangle, okay, and then coming back down here. So that's how I view that, because again, when you start at one side of the spectrum and you want to know those details, which you have to want to know to even be able to perceive them, you have to have that desire to want to learn and grow. See, I feel like learning and growing are synonymous. It's kind of like you can't learn without growing, right? You can't pick up those details without starting up this mountain. See, and what happens is that gives you, in that growth process, right, climbing the mountain, however you want to say it, it gives you what? It gives you perspective as you're going up, okay? Like this, more of like a bird's eye view. You can see more down here, okay? And so I feel like a lot of times people seem to have good arguments when they're just, holding steadfast, hard and fast to one stance, right? One end of an argument, one end of a topic. They seem sometimes to have a great reasoning, right? But if you really examine what they're saying, a lot of times you'll discover that what they're standing on, what their foundation is made up of, is really just, you might say, regurgitated statements. Okay? And when you ask them to elaborate or explain that one statement, a lot of times they can't do it. And that's really interesting. And yeah, that, I feel like people who are tend to be that way seem to be the most confident. And a lot of times they get really frustrated if you ask for explanation, right? It's kind of like you're just immediately labeled, you know, an idiot or whatever because you're even asking at all. And to me, that's just simply deflection. It's just to slander a name call. It's just a way to get you off their back because there's nothing there. They can't substantiate it, right? Their argument, their stance, whatever it is. So I love that old saying, and I don't know exactly how it goes, but it's something like this. It's like you only truly understand something if you can explain it in simple terms. See? Because if you can't break something down in just simple terms, what does that say? To me, that says you're stuck on fanciful words that are actually empty if you don't even really know what they mean or how they work together to support something. If you can't just explain it and break it down, you don't really understand it. It makes sense to me. It rings true to me. It's kind of like, it reminds me of trying to explain something to a little kid, like a 4-year-old. You can't just use a blanket statement with them. They're not going to be satisfied with that, right? It's kind of like even when you go into details, trying to explain something to a little kid, every step of your explanation is met with, why? 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 See? So I love that. I love that about kids because they encourage you to dig deeper, right? And so I feel like the more details we provide ourselves or others, whatever it is, the more we get closer to the truth. Okay, and this is highlighted in just a really beautiful way in the cartoon. I mentioned it before. It's a very modern cartoon. I don't think it's been out very long. On the Disney Channel or Disney Juniors, called Bluey, and it's really sweet because it highlights how much the parents learn from viewing the world through the eyes of a child, and all these revelations they have. It's like there's so much meaning in the simple. It totally destroys false structures of thought that were previously confining, but we didn't even know it. See, simplicity is beautiful like that. Simplicity sometimes can serve, I feel like, as that double-edged sword, right? It kind of just cuts right through to the point. So yeah, it's kind of like, as an example, if your kids if you're like, hey, I gotta go to work, and they're like, why? You're like, well, I gotta make money. Well, why? And you're like, yeah, why do we have to live off of money? Why do we have this whole system we have? And, what's an alternative? It's in other words, it just opens up so much for us to think about. It's really interesting, right? So I've been thinking about this whole underworld that's in a lot of myths and fairy tales that they talk about. And I'm starting to think that the underworld actually represents the unseen areas of our psyche, okay? For a while, I was kind of just bouncing around some different ideas, for what it means. And maybe it can stand for a lot of different things. Again, it doesn't have to be an either or. Maybe it, depending on the context and the story, it can be a metaphor for a lot of different things. But today, and sometimes, I think about the underworld as representing those areas of our psyche that are not in the light, that are not illuminated, I guess, in the light. They're just in the dark recesses of our psyche, our unconsciousness, right? The unseen areas of our psyche. The parts of us, and not just us, but of reality too, that remain hidden. Okay? So the thing is, truth, real, absolute, objective, not subjective truth, is there, right? Truths like that are there, but they are hidden from us, I think, only because we are unable to perceive them. It's an issue of perception. It's an issue of understanding. That's why wisdom is the principal thing. And with all you're getting, get understanding. That part is crucial. That's like the stone, the turning point, the main part, right? the treasure to find in the underworld, whatever it is the understanding piece. So because it's a key to knowing truth, the real truth. Okay, so in that regard, you might consider ignorance, or the absence of truth, that ignorance serves as a blindfold. Okay, and when you think about things like power, you realize that whoever grasps the truth fully holds the power, which doesn't have to be a bad thing. But if there's greed involved in the equation, then there's motivation to hide the truth. Okay? So in our personal life, we can observe people hiding things. We may not know what they're hiding, but we can see their actions and reactions, and just if we pay attention, sometimes if we just get quiet and just focus more on what we take in with our eyes and ears, right? If we can just observe people closely, we can infer, you might say, that they're hiding something by these things. For example, and there's more, just some examples: being offended when asked to share something, like details, right? And a lot of times that's what they're doing when they're offended. They're not actually offended, they're just weaponizing that emotion against you, by being angry or hurt or whatever it is. A lot of times it's a show to deflect any further inquiries. It's kind of like, oh, I'm really upset him, I better not ask anymore, and it just immediately kicks you off the track. You see what I'm saying? Just takes you off that path. It's like if you were getting close to something, like something big, you're walking this path, and you're remember that triangle? You're about to start heading up and finding out the real truth. If somebody's hiding something, for selfish motives or whatever, then emotion can be weaponized to drive you off onto a different path. Okay. Sometimes they'll catch what they're saying, like mid-sentence, and stop. Or something will slip out. You can look for that. I've experienced that firsthand. It doesn't make sense. Someone who does that is going to explain immediately, probably. I do. If something slips out and I'm thinking, well, have you ever been drinking water and you're like, man, I was so thirsty, this coffee's so good, but you're drinking water, and it's just because you were just drinking coffee too. Stuff like that. You can tell the difference. You can absolutely tell the difference. Deflection, distraction, even intimidation, if they feel that you're starting to get somewhere, and it's very effective. Okay, intimidation can be very effective, and I know this firsthand. You can be just simply thinking, and they can see that you're thinking, and that in itself can be a threat. And you're putting puzzle pieces together, and if they're just really watching you, okay, like these people who have something to hide, if they don't want you to know something, then they're going to really be watching you close to make sure you don't put those puzzle pieces together. And so if you catch them looking at you, a lot of times what they can do is they can kind of just take the stance of intimidation, put those shoulders back, and just really start looking at you, and just start moving in close, to give you a hug, or a kiss or something. But it's their energy. It's like they just go into this I better cast a quick spell kind of mode or something. You know what I mean? But it catches you off guard. It's something that's kind of like to just totally break your thought process. See, they can use intimidation in that way. I know this firsthand. And you can also look at your life beyond the personal and start to identify these same tactics, and it's good. It's kind of like, I think we know this on some level, but to make this part of our discernment and our just everyday awareness is important to catch things, see, on the grander scale. Just checking for, when emotion is weaponized. It doesn't have to be an emotion someone's displaying in a reaction toward you. It can be that, but it can also be someone trying to intentionally elicit an emotion from you to get you focused on that emotion instead of what you were thinking about. if you were about to put some pieces together or connect some dots that would have jeopardized whatever, this person's plan is. So just keep a check on people working emotions, okay? Those slip-ups that come out and then they're never explained. They just keep on going. Like I think they call them a Freudian slip. I can't say that, but you know what I'm saying. It's a term. And then again, you still have deflection, distraction, and intimidation. Now, this next part is a big part of this message today. I also believe that the details in something, okay, whatever it is, a topic, pick a topic. The details on a topic are what can actually unify us, okay? And that's why the details are discouraged. The details are demonized with all kind of different tactics, okay? Because again, it's going to start to enlighten you, give you perspective, and it's going to unify. If you've got someone over here and someone over here, and they start going, both of them, into the details and gaining perspective, well, guess what? They're coming closer and closer together too. This can be in a personal relationship, like a family unit. It can be like a spouse and spouse situation and someone trying to come in and drive a wedge. It can be within just any kind of affiliations or groups or communities, right? These tactics. So we have to look at persuading when a person is persuaded to camp at one end or the other on the spectrum, okay? Because persuasion to do that is really eliciting a state of ignorance, okay? Because details always move you toward the middle, right? Details always move you toward the middle if emotions don't sabotage critical thinking. They can just bring you right back down, okay? Like a boulder from the top rolling down that mountain, and just knocks you right back down to your stance, okay? And two, even if a truth truly is way over on one side or the other, I just encourage you to be cautious of anyone wanting to sway you to a simplistic explanation, because if someone seems to deter you from considering the details, that can indicate their tactics are on purpose and that they know what they're doing. I just, kind of, when it just doesn't feel right and it's kind of like there's pressure there and stuff, just be on the lookout for that. We need to be observant enough to recognize fancy speech intended to elicit a black and white decision, right? Fooling you into thinking that the details were considered. But see, if someone won't hang with you in a conversation and discuss the details, if they're very reactive, for example, then you may just give up discussing those details altogether with them to pacify them, because they're getting emotional. And see, that's what they want. So and sometimes it is an issue of maturity, right? Or lack of. It can truly be that, not necessarily bad intention. So this is where the details matter, even on this level too. We just need to look at that. So let's take a look at what I was going to say is, this is how division works, right? This kind of thinking truly does create a divide. So with that in our mind, I want us to take a look at Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. Okay, so what's interesting about chapter 4 of Ecclesiastes, my version anyway of the Bible has this section titled "No Comforter for the Oppressed." Something to think about, right? And then specifically at verse 9, the title is "Two Are Better Than One." So let's take a look at verses 9 through 12 in chapter 4. It says, "Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if two lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him. And a threefold cord is not quickly broken." You see, so unity matters. It matters, and it's not a matter of I'm jumping ahead here in my notes, but It's not a matter of compromising our values. It's really not. That's the lie, see? That, in order to have unity, we have to compromise our values. It's just a matter of defining what our values really are. See, prioritizing that kind of stuff matters. And so, intended division might be to isolate you from your friends and family, like in a small scale relationship type thing, or on a greater scale from your community and more, okay? And on the micro scale, division can be intended to be within your own psyche, to keep you separated from your own logical process. So you won't put those pieces together, see? So division is a huge tactic of the enemy, okay? The darkness. So then we have Amos chapter 3 verse 3 says, can two walk together unless they are agreed? Okay, so we need to ask ourselves if it's really worth it to try and walk together with someone whose values don't align with ours. Okay, but furthermore, we need to define what our values are, okay, the critical values. There's a difference. So we don't, like I said before, we don't want to live by thinking that, okay, we have to achieve unity by betraying ourselves, because some of us have actually tried that. Some of us thought that that was a legitimate requirement, and it's not, We don't want to compromise our core values either. Like I said, it comes down to defining what the big values are. We're going to talk about it. So, even Jesus said he came not to bring peace, but a sword. I want to say that. Romans chapter 16, I want to read to you verses 17 and 18. Listen to this. Now I urge you, brethren, note those, which means you got to be paying attention, right? Note those who cause division. Actually, it says divisions and offenses, contrary to the doctrine which you learned, and avoid them. For those who are such do not serve our Lord Jesus Christ, but their own belly, and by smooth words and flattering speech deceive the hearts of the simple. Okay, so see, someone who loves truth genuinely wants you to discover it for yourself. Okay, and they'll never pressure you or intimidate you or use slander and any of those kind of tactics. Okay, that kind of stuff should be a red flag. The truth should stand on its own. And it may take people to, figure it out, a while to figure it out, but it shouldn't have to be argued and achieved and spread through these unethical tactics. Okay, so we sometimes are encouraged to be offended by, or even participate in division based on our differences of opinion, perceptions, or beliefs. But the real division we should be looking out for is the one caused by those seeking division. You see what I mean? We all have our own truths. All of us do. There's not any two people in the world, okay, even twins, that are 100% alike. It's just reality. We're all different. We're all unique, okay? And those rooted in love never perpetuate division. That's the fruit you're looking for, see? True division exists between those residing in love and those not. So I just encourage you not to be fooled. All right, so I hope this has given you a lot to think about today. I hope that it was entertaining and enlightening and got the wheels turning most of all. And I just thank you so much for coming along to hear the message. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.